Let's do this. Pound it. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome back to the Cape CopCast. I'm Lisa Greenberg. I'm a public affairs officer here for the Cape Coral Police Department.
And I'm Officer Mercedes Simonds. Together we make up the public affairs team. We have a lot of fun doing it. We started this podcast a while back, and we realized that we probably needed to give people a reason to listen, get to know us, and feel us out.
We're fully aware that we've spent the last few episodes kind of introducing you to different people here at the department, and now we want to take just a little bit of time, not too much time, to let you get to know us as people here at the Cape Coral Police Department.
All right. So I feel like law enforcement's kind of one of those things that you have to really be engaged with and enjoy to want to be in the field, whether you're a cop or not. So how did your passion for law enforcement and how it involves with the community start?
So obviously I did not have this dream or desire to be in law enforcement from a small child. I kind of, throughout my ways of life and all the different twists and turns, ended up in law enforcement. I was a journalist for almost 10 years at the local Fox station here in Southwest Florida. And so basically during my time there, I rose through the ranks, starting as a reporter, moving into a weekend anchor, moving into an anchor position. And for the last 5 years, I was a morning news anchor at Fox. And when I first started out at Fox 4, I was a reporter, and I spent a lot of time covering crime. I minored in criminology, or I think at UF it was called an outside focus. I went to the University of Florida in criminology. So the interest has always been there of criminology. Yeah. See, we're learning things about each other. So the interest has been there. It just wasn't something where I was like, I want to grow up to be a police officer. Right. So I worked as a reporter, and during that time, I covered a lot of crime. Usually the big crime story of the day was my story. And I worked very closely with the Cape Coral Police Department. Fox 4 is very close in proximity to Cape Police. It's located in Cape Coral. It's actually the only TV station that was in Cape Coral. So we worked pretty closely with Cape Coral Police Department, and actually Deputy Chief Dana Costin was the public affairs officer at the time. So he and I obviously forged a good professional relationship and stayed in touch as I moved throughout my career and as he moved throughout his to now be deputy chief.
Yeah, it was really funny when your job popped up. Obviously, we had a lot of really good candidates. It's a popular spot for reporters to want to go into kind of public affairs. There's a lot of similar traits and things like that, which is how you ended up being perfect. But I was like, why do I keep hearing this name, Lisa Greenberg? What's so cool about her? And then I met you, and you're pretty cool. And
you're cool.
And also skilled.
Thank you.
I think we've done a lot of different things and started doing a lot of 3-dimensional content, videos, podcasts.
Putting that journalistic experience to work. And it was crazy because I had decided to get out of TV news, and I posted on my Facebook page that I was leaving TV news and that it was my last week at Fox 4. And Deputy Chief Costin messaged me and was like, hey, what are your plans after TV? And I was like, I actually quit without having a job lined up. I was looking forward to kind of having a break and taking some time to figure it out. And he's like, why don't you give me a call? And we chatted, and he had talked about how a public affairs officer position for a civilian was getting ready to open and encouraged me to apply. And so I was like, you know what? Why not? And here we are. It's funny because there was actually, for the longest time, a picture of me as a reporter on the Cape Coral Police Department website where Deputy Chief Costin, who was the public affairs officer at the time, would post the news releases, this picture of me. And of course I hated it because I was looking into the viewfinder of my camera and I was making this really ugly face. So that's my very long-winded answer of how I ended up in law enforcement.
I like it.
Yeah. So how did you end up in law enforcement?
Oh gosh. Okay. So my dad was a cop. If anyone listened to the episode where we interviewed Captain Brand Chenault, very good episode. Go back, listen to it. So my dad was a cop. I kind of grew up listening to him tell all his stories. I went back and forth between being a cop and being a teacher. And actually I ended up being both, which is pretty interesting. I love kids. I like teaching, but also I always said that I wanted to be a cop, and my dad had always been like, no. I think any dad that has a daughter and kind of knows the challenges of law enforcement, I guess he initially didn't want that for me. And then I forged my way through. I went to college. I changed my major a million times, like one does.
As we all do.
I switched from criminal justice to sociology to psychology, a couple different things. So I got my bachelor's in psychology, and then I got my master's in police psychology. I did an internship actually with the Polk County Sheriff's Office when I was in college. It was like a huge 400-hour internship.
That's awesome.
Loved it. Got to work with everybody. Got all different angles of the field. And then I ended up doing teaching for a while I was working on my master's degree, and then I fell into law enforcement. I wanted to do police psychology and do counseling with police officers with PTSD issues.
Oh, wow.
But then I found out that police officers don't really like to just sit there and talk about everything with somebody who doesn't understand. It's kind of a niche field. So I was like, okay, I'll go be a cop, get 2 years of experience, and then go do police psychology. So I started with the Montgomery County Police Department in Maryland and never looked back. I didn't know how I was honestly going to be. I was a very empathetic person, and sometimes it's hard when you see and deal with a lot of difficult situations to have that much empathy, but it ended up working out really well, and somehow I ended up being, I don't want to say good at it, but I ended up...
You are good at it.
Well, like you find your passions, and I loved helping people. I know that's like the typical answer, but I think for everyone it evolves from like helping people into different things. Like now I would probably change it to like, I like helping people, but ultimately, like, I enjoy being a problem solver with other capable problem solvers. I think it's interesting to see, like, how my mind works to solve an issue versus somebody else's, and everybody else has investigative techniques, and you can learn from each other, and it's just a career that never gets boring.
Absolutely. Well, and I think about you and I too, when you mentioned like the different problem solving, we're such good complements to each other because I think we just, our backgrounds and our different experiences, you know, you're a police officer, so you get the law enforcement standpoint, you have a unique way of thinking, and then I have the communications background and the engagement background and things like that. And so you bring it together, and we could be presented with a situation and have completely different ways of handling it that are both good ways to handle something. And then we talk through, okay, which would be the best for this particular scenario. And I just think it works out well that we are so different and we come together to make this public affairs office.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of my favorite things is we'll have an idea. Somebody will ask for something. I'll be like, okay, I am thinking this. And you'll be like, oh, what if we do that to that? And I'll be like, what if we do that to that to that? And then it turns into something that we both enjoy working on.
For sure.
But yeah, so I started in Montgomery County, Maryland. I worked there for 3 years. Did a lot of different things there, met a lot of great people. Great department, but the culture of law enforcement was changing. My parents moved down to Florida, and then I didn't like that they left. I loved my parents. I'm very close to them. I was visiting them like 1 week every month, and it was really cutting into my time off. And I was like, you know what? I don't even know like how I'll feel about any police department down there, but at least I'm by my family. At least I'll have my support system there.
For sure.
And I love it here. I've moved down. I've never looked back. I met new friends and my husband now, and he's the best thing that ever happened. He's an angel of a human being, and I'm just really lucky to kind of have found this spot. And you.
I mean, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. And I feel like it's nice because you do have that work-life balance now here that you maybe didn't have so much when you were in Montgomery County just because your family was so far away. And it's funny to think that you like work at the same department as your husband. So it's nice because you guys can vent and kind of also talk about the highs and lows together and understand everything.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. So he's on patrol. Maybe he'll be in a podcast episode later, not because of any particular reason other than he's just got a really cool backstory, and he's just a great human being and adds a lot to the job. We were talking about kind of empathy before, and he's someone who started with a lot of empathy, and I think maybe it's because he joined later in his life. Like, he's 37. Sorry, Chris, telling your age. So he's 37. He started when he was, I think, like 34, and he was already kind of just a grown adult who knew what he wanted, and he's just kept all of that heart and applies it toward his job and people every day. And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's incredibly good at his job. And that's why we say, if we do bring him on the podcast, it's not because he's your husband. It's because he's great at what he does. It's interesting because you come from elsewhere. You weren't born and raised here in Cape Coral. And so I think in some ways that adds like an extra appreciation for the area, because I was born and raised here in Southwest Florida. I was born in Charlotte County, worked in Cape Coral for the last almost 10 years of my life. It'll be 10 years in July that I've worked in Cape Coral, because again, Fox 4 is in Cape Coral where I used to work. But Charlotte County is just a 40-minute drive north of here, and it's all similar, same weather, same great climate, same great types of people. And
are you one of the people that are like, oh, all the people moving here, you're just creating traffic in my life?
Kind of, but I also can appreciate the growth and the good things that come along with it. Charlotte County and even like Cape Coral, Fort Myers was so different when I was a kid. I mean, Charlotte County is still pretty small, but just seeing how much it's grown, and even Fort Myers has grown so much since I was a kid. It's funny because whenever we do like back to school shopping, Charlotte County didn't have a very good mall. No offense to Charlotte County, at least for like, young kids. So we would drive to like Edison Mall, or we would drive to Tampa to go to the International Mall. And so I spent a lot of time in Fort Myers or Coconut Point or Miramar or wherever. And so I spent a lot of time in Lee County that way, and it's just seeing how much it's grown. So I can appreciate the growth and the good things it brings, but it is kind of frustrating when we do have to deal with all that traffic. Yeah. That's a lot.
Well, everybody thinks that, and then they meet someone who's a transplant that they love, that adds value, and it's just interesting to see like how things change over time. And sure, traffic sucks, but America is made up of people who came from all types of different countries at one point or another. Obviously, most Americans value, and we're proud of the fact that we're Americans, but I think the coolest part is that we're all made up of different cultures from different places, and somehow still came to find a unified idea behind everything.
For sure. And I can't blame people for wanting to live here. So it's like, you can be mad, but why wouldn't they want to be here? It's the best.
I miss fall. Like, I miss the changing of the colors and everything, but I love the warm weather. And my grandpa, actually, he lives down here too, and he says it's pool 30. He goes in the pool every single day. And it's funny talking about law enforcement. He was a volunteer deputy for 30 years, probably more. Sorry if I'm wrong, Grandpa. But I just come from like a whole background. I think my grandma actually traced paperwork. I'm like 5th generation law enforcement.
Wow. It's funny because my family, I don't have anyone in law enforcement. I have some military background in my family, but no one that was a police officer or anything like that. But my family's always been big supporters of law enforcement and police work. So my parents were definitely excited when I took this job with the Cape Coral Police Department. And it's fun because, when I was on TV, they could watch me on TV every morning. And so having this podcast is kind of cool because it's a way for them to still see my work. And that's fun also. So it's a good time. It's a good time. That. I'm curious what you would say are like things you enjoy doing outside of work. I know work takes up a huge bit of your life as a police officer, but what are kind of things about you that you enjoy outside of law enforcement?
I mean, I love cooking, baking. I don't actually bake that much anymore. That's probably some passion that I would like to get back to. I was actually unpacking a bunch of boxes because I didn't get married too long ago. So I was moving my boxes and stuff into his house, and I was unpacking, and I'm like, wow, I have all of this baking stuff, huge cheesecake pans and all the different, egg yolk separators, just basic things like that most single men don't have in their home. And I'm like, wow, I should really start doing it again.
I would love to be the beneficiary of that.
I'll make some cookies. That's my forte, is a bunch of different cookies. My favorite cookies to make are cookies and cream cookies that have Oreos in them, and then pistachio cookies.
Okay. We're making cookies.
Okay. The secret is dry pudding mix, actually. It gives it this whole different flavor.
I like to bake too. I've spent a lot of time, especially my high school years, doing some baking. I gotta say now, I'm not the biggest fan of cooking. I'll do it out of necessity, but I don't get as much enjoyment. I'm definitely the person who enjoys going out to eat more than having to cook and things like that.
Love going out to eat.
Oh my gosh.
If eating out was a hobby, it would be mine. And that's what I love about Florida too, is there's so many restaurants here. There's so many, not just chain restaurants, but there's a lot of good mom and pop restaurants here.
Let me think. What do I like to do outside of eat? I love to be outside, and I love to be active. So doing anything active outside is really fun. I love to go for walks and go to the beach, and I'm a certified personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I also work as a trainer, a fitness trainer, group fitness trainer at Burn Boot Camp in Fort Myers. And I've been doing that for over a year now, almost a year and a half. And I love that. I love fitness, and I more importantly love encouraging other people to love fitness. So that takes up a big part of my life as well.
I love that. That's so fun. I need to go to one of your classes sometime.
Oh, I would love to kick your butt.
I feel like I'm like decently in shape, but I feel like anytime you do some kind of cross training, it's always somehow more exhausting if you're not quite used to that version of training.
Sure. Anytime you do something that's outside of your usual when it comes to fitness, it's exhausting, it's tiring, and you're going to be sore. But hey, it'll be fun.
I was never the natural athlete. That's something that I always had to work out. I could always run, but like outside of that, I didn't grow up like knowing how to weight lift. Or my husband's great. He does like MMA and trains jujitsu all the time. Wow. And he's the top-notch athlete. I have to like find other things that I enjoy doing that keeps me in shape.
I'm right there with you. I was a dancer for like 21 years, I want to say.
What?
Yeah. So from like age 3 until I was 22. So what is that? 19 years? I was a dancer for 19 years. Math is not my strong suit.
What was your like dancing forte?
Oh, I did all of it, like ballet, jazz, hip hop, acrobatics, tap. I mean, fitness kind of came out of left field when I started working out at Burn Boot Camp. I just loved it. So that's where that came from. I was a dancer. So yeah.
I love that.
Well, I think that about does it. I think we've given people a little bit of time to get to know us a little bit better. And of course, if anyone has any other questions they want to ask us, they could reach out to us through email, which is capepdpao@capecoral.gov. You can message us on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram. We will always be responsive there as well. But we just kind of wanted to give you a little bit more about us, because we spend so much time getting you to hear the stories of other people, and thought you might be wondering, who are those girls and what's their background?
Yep. But for the next episodes, we'll get back to everyone else. We have some good episodes coming up with different people you probably haven't seen or heard from, different perspectives. And of course, everybody has a different cool story that we're really excited to share with you.
Oh, absolutely. So we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Cape CopCast, where we dive into the heart of the Cape Coral Police Department safety initiatives, community relations, and the insightful stories of different officers that make up our department.
Please like and share our podcast. If you have feedback, you can email capepdpao@capecoral.gov. And remember to follow us on social media. Our handle is @CapePD on all major platforms. Stay safe, stay Cape.